Welcome once again to Product One's technical web series. Since Creo 8 is out, I will be making a series of videos showcasing what's new because it is not going to do justice to the new version of Creo Parametric, which is version 8, if we were to try and lump everything all in one video. So the first installment, which is what I'm going to show you now, is going to focus on some of the core functionality or productivity tools that you might see when you operating Creo 8.0. So if I were to create a brand new part, so this is a simple component, and when you enable datum planes now, you will realize that the datum planes in questions are a little bit shaded. This is something that PDC have just thrown in there. It helps when you've got a clutter of components in an assembly. Sometimes it does get a little bit difficult to see where the datum plane is. And what I also like about this is it sort of like enhances the visibility of the positive and negative side of the datum plane. So people do not know this. So datum planes do have a positive and negative end of datum planes. And sometimes you do find this when you have a datum plane new datum plane that you create that's referencing an old one, you'll realize that you sometimes get a negative value or a positive value as well. So this is what I would like to also showcase. So I can say, now that I have the visibility of these data planes, I can easily change the display of the positive side of the datum feature and maybe make the positive one to be green. So just off the bat, you will realize that I'm looking now on the positive side of the datum plane. And of course, if I were to rotate this, the color changes to show that I'm looking on the negative side of the datum plane. Now, the other change that PDC has made is on its sketch feature. So there are a couple of enhancements that PDC has made, but I just want to highlight one. So you will realize that when you've got dimensions now that are overlapping onto the sketch geometry, you will realize that now you've got a block around the dimension just to enhance the display of that dimension. Yet again, you can opt out to show this or to hide it as well. So I'm just going to create a simple block here, and I'll just give it maybe a little bit of a depth. Let's make it 10 or so. So there's nothing special here. What I want to showcase now is a couple of enhancements that PDC has made onto the UI. The first one is whenever you're creating a feature, you will realize that now all these dialog boxes no longer come on top of the model tree, because that was a little bit distracting. What I also love is the fact that you can literally drag some of these tabs. So let's say I want to utilize the shape of the whole dialog box or whatever the case is. I can have all of these displayed simultaneously and also maybe show the body and so forth. What I like here, I'm going to cancel this feature and so forth. If I happen to create another whole feature, it identifies or remembers where I've placed those dialog boxes. And of course, I can choose to return them back to where they used to be. So why is this significant? It's significant because of it enables you to have a full view of certain features that or options that you can utilize when you're busy creating a component. It speeds up the component creation. The other thing that PDC has added is what we call a sketched hole. So if I were to create, let's make it a square here. I'm not going to focus too much on the dimensions on this one. Now, immediately when I say accept, I'm having 4 holes that are literally sitting on the vertices of that rectangle. Of course, I can say on top of that, place holes in midpoint of those rectangles as well, or I can remove the ones on the vertices and so forth. You might ask, why is this important? It's important because you can have a certain type of arrangement of holes that are driven by a sketch. So if you can have a look here, I'm having one hole in the model tree, but 4 holes in my graphics window. So where you get to see the power of this. So let's just do this. Let me just make a quick modification of this. So let's say maybe I've got a line here and another line. Maybe let me put it here. So let me just mirror what I've just done onto the other side. So while I'm doing this, I just want to showcase the power of this. So now I'm having about 8 holes in a situation where they're driven by a sketch. Now, I can do a couple of other things as well, just to showcase what's also new. So if you were to create a coordinate system, you will realize that the coordinate system now has those colors that we have when you're doing your assembly. So let's just modify this placement of that datum feature. And of course, if I were to say pattern, it recognizes where those other holes are located. All right, that's the first part. So the other thing that I'm also going to showcase is a little bit of the multi-body components that we spoke about in previous videos. So this is an inset. This could be any component or any feature that you want to repurpose or put into your new product. So let me take a scenario like this. Let's say I want to insert that component here in one of those holes. So I can easily say, let me pull that component, and this is the part that I'm looking for, and I'm going to utilize a coordinate system to place this. This is the coordinate system, and this is the corresponding coordinate system here. Of course, I'm not going to copy any geometry except just specifying the body that I want to insert here. So what I have now is this component here. What I also want to highlight is it now identifies that there's 2 bodies, which is body 1, the gray component, and body 2, which is that. Of course, I can now pattern this, let's say insert here, and it will identify where it's supposed to go. So for an example, if I were to take this component here and say pattern, if I were to pattern this, it goes into the selected areas where the coordinate system has been referenced. That's pretty nifty as well. Oh, just before I forget, I can also select a body now and make it transparent, as you can see there. So all that I've just done, it selected this component and made it transparent. Of course, I can opt against that, or use the transparency scale to say, okay, this is how much transparent I want the object to be. So that is also a nice touch. So the benefits of that is if you're having, let's say, a huge assembly and you've got multiple parts in the way and so forth, you can actually select those bodies and make them transparent so that you can keep on working. Now, what I also want to highlight is how these components look like. I've got about 8 of them in here. So what happens if I utilize the Boolean operation? I select this and then I select those 8 components to be consumed, and you will realize that in your model tree, you're now having one body, which makes sense, right? Because all those components are now part of one body. Now, what you can do is this. You can go into your tree setup and say, show me consumed quilts or bodies. What this gives you is in here where now you get to see the consumed bodies. All right. So that's a couple of things that PDC has put forward. So now let's do a couple of other things. So a quick one is just to show maybe a typical use case in, let's say, in the whole creation. So yeah, I've got a sketch, and just as you saw, you don't have to have a sketch predefined, but however, if I've got a sketch here, I can easily select and say this is what I want. Of course, if the shape of that particular sketch changes, this will also change. We've seen that as well. So the other item that I want to showcase here is the following. So in sheet metal, there are some couple of enhancements. So let's start with this one. So what I have here is just a flat plate. But what PDC did on sheet metal was the ability to take a flat wall. By simply pressing Control, you can have flat walls, obviously in the same magnitude or dimension. Of course, you can modify how these are put together to say, do you want it to have with seams or without seams or whatever the case is. So that's basically the part and parcel of this, and you can say give it a gap or whatever the case is. And whatever change you make, let's say I want to add on to the geometry. So this is essentially what I have. So why this is powerful is because of all that I'm having is one flange on the model tree, but multiple flanges in my display. You can also do something like this as well. So for an example, I can say, how about I put in a flange, and everybody knows that if I make any modification onto this flange in my sketch mode, so basically if I were to come here, I can sketch or utilize a predefined sketch. So this is the sketch in question, and depending on how you define your sketch, this is what you will have. So that's the power of small little enhancements that you've got inside sheet metal as well. So the other aspects that I want to showcase is inseparable assemblies. So if I were to come here, let's just say this is the assembly that I'm looking for. So many people struggle with this dilemma. You've got an off-the-shelf item. So let's take a simple example. Look at this subassembly. This is a subassembly of parts, components that you have to manage inside your PDM or Windchill system. You now have to look at all these components and so forth. But when you buy this, it comes in as a unit. And it becomes a nightmare because you now need to manage this component and that component. So what you can do in Creo Parametric 8, you can do the following. You can say, how about I make this what we call an inseparable assembly? It gives you a little bit of a notification there, the implication thereof, and then I'm going to say, yes, make that a inseparable assembly. Now, if I go inside that subassembly now, you will realize the components, they slightly change, and they also reference in terms of which is the subassembly that they are linked to. What this means is, maybe let me do this. If I were to open, let's say, a folder called test, there's nothing in that folder as you can actually see. So now if I open this assembly here, that's supposed to be inseparable, and I do a simple backup. In fact, let's not do a file copy, let's do a simple backup. If I were to back up that subassembly, I'm going to close everything, erase not display, and when I go into that folder, you will see that there's no components but that one assembly. It's actually very easy to manage this in a sense that now when I want to either share components or reuse a certain subassembly, this is how I would actually do it. So that is it for this particular segment. Remember, I am going to be making more videos, and for more videos like this, please do not forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Until next time, goodbye.